Michelob Ultra and Myrtle Beach wholesaler Southern Crown Partners Incorporated know our consumers enjoy relaxing days on the water with Mick Ultra's crisp and refreshing taste in hand. It's important to remember to drink and boat responsibly. Choose to be or to designate a sober skipper before leaving the dock. Do it for your family and friends, your passengers, and everyone else on board. Michelob Ultra salutes all sober skippers who take the pledge. Cheers, and we'll see you on the water. Freeman Boat Works and Trilogy Outdoors are proud to announce the addition of Freeman Boat Works to our family of incredible partners. Billy Freeman and his team at Freeman Boat Works epitomize the American dream. From building the first boat in Billy's backyard to a 150,000 square foot state-of-the-art manufacturing plant over the past 15 years, they are building one of the most sought-after boats in the U.S. and beyond. These incredible fishing platforms are built in South Carolina and are second to none in stability, speed, and performance overall. These catamaran designs are engineered not only to get you to the fish fast, but comfortably too. Years of refining designs and pioneering the modern performance fishing catamaran is why Freeman Boat Works is the #1 choice for some of the biggest names in the fishing industry. If it's long runs in the Gulf or the Carolinas, or days you can go fishing in South Florida when most center consoles stay at the dock, Freeman Boat Works is at the forefront in all categories. For more information on Freeman Boat Works and their 6 available models, visit www.freemanboatworks.com. Redefine your expectations.
In Myrtle Beach, you always go at your own pace. Lie out on the sand, lie out by the pool, go boogie boarding, go surfing, walk the boardwalk, walk the marsh walk, golf at one of 90 golf courses, mini golf at one of 50 mini golf courses, fish off a pier, fish from a chartered boat, go shopping, get drinks, eat the freshest seafood. The list is exhaustive, but the experience isn't. You can go all out or do nothing at all. How you relax is up to you. There is so much to do and explore, whether you're traveling with friends, family, or just yourself. With 60 miles of beach, you're going to find your place. If this sounds like what you need, then this is where you belong.
Trilogy Outdoors.
All right, folks. Hey, it's Trilogy Outdoors Podcast coming to you. And I am in our new studio that we use from time to time, the Pond Road Storage Studio here on Highway 17 in Murrells Inlet. And I tell you what, I love the place. I've got my new 250 Bay Reef from Key West Boats in here hanging out, staying nice and clean. And you know what, to be honest with you, it is so nice to go use the boat and not have to clean it before I use it. After I put it up, it looks just like it did. But real quick, the senator is not with me today. He is busy in Columbia. Lots of things going on up there, and I'm sure most of you are aware of the constitutional carry bill that passed last week with some amendments to it, and Stephen was behind one of those amendments, and it's been a crazy couple weeks, but you know what? I support my senator. I support my friend. I support my business partner, and I think he's completely looking out for us. But we are not going to talk about that. This week in Fins, Fur, and Feathers, we're going to talk a lot of fins, and we're going to talk about how you can learn to do it better and catch more fish. And I am delighted to have a guest, and that song right there might give it away.
George Poveromo.
There you go.
Saltwater fishing.
That is my guest today, and it is a pleasure to have George joining me via phone from sunny and not so warm Florida. George.
Well, that is right. It's cold by our standards down here in South Florida. I think the mercury dipped into the 50s last night, and everyone holds their breath at Florida Power and Light. My blackout when everybody starts turning their heater on down here. We're not used to it.
Well, I can tell you, I'm sure this is perfect fishing weather for you, and you would probably be fishing today. But I know you're busy. Your schedule, I cannot imagine your schedule. Of course, are you filming or currently for next season now, or do you get through these seminars and then pick back up?
Oh, we get through the seminars. The method to our madness is when we shoot for our new season of shows. For example, for our 2025 season, we'll start filming this coming March, and then we'll stay busy till usually around November, December we have to do 13 episodes for Discovery. And so right around November, December, we'll be completely done with shooting. And then the shows, we go into the editing with it. And then come January to the beginning of March, just about every single weekend, with the exception of the Miami Boat Show weekend, we travel the seminar series. So, it's like a craziness. As soon as you get a belly full of doing the TV shows and you're coming to the final 13th episode, the scenery changes. Then you get on what we call the roller coaster ride, the Saltwater Sportsman Seminar Series, where you run just about 8 single weekends in a row traveling with that. And then just when you get a belly full of that ride, you get about 2 weeks to catch your breath, and you go back into filming. So it's a crazy deal. And I jokingly refer to it as a big ride at a carnival. Once you buckle up, you're in until that ride's over. No matter how much you're screaming or whatever, you're in that cart till it's over.
Well, I'll tell you what, we are honored once again that you chose Myrtle Beach to come and do one of your in-person seminar series. And we're talking about the Saltwater Sportsman National Seminar Series, and it will be here March 2nd at the Conference Center at Barefoot Resort. And we are that last stop on the roller coaster, aren't we?
And we're going to be in a very good mood. I could guarantee you that, because that's like the last day of school, and everybody gets in that last day of school.
Oh, yes. Now, where are we going to have that after party at? Because the last after party I attended was a lot of fun.
It'll be at the after party be at the Bass Pro Shops in Myrtle Beach.
Yep.
And the seminar goes from 9 a.m. until 3. And then the after party at Bass Pro goes from 4 o'clock to about 6 or 7 o'clock. And they set aside a certain section of the store that only the seminar attendees could get in with their badge. And then the faculty will be there too. And it's an opportunity for us to, in a more relaxed setting, spend more one-on-one time with our attendees. So it's a, it's a fun time, and we'll wrap it up there in Myrtle Beach after the seminar with a big after party.
I think I know every time I have you on, whether it's here or on the radio show, that I always like to mention back to the year, and I have tried to find the exact year, but it was at the Palace Theater, and I want to say it was so we did the radio show there, your second time here, when Kenny and I did the radio show at the seminar. Prior to that, and it may have been 2008 or 9 or somewhere around that, or 10, somewhere in there. But anyway, it is the first seminar I ever attended when I was really focusing on fishing and wanted to learn more. And I can't tell you how much I enjoyed it. And I can still remember Larry Horowitz, Brent McMullen was on stage, Harry Vernon was on stage. I'm trying to remember the others. Maybe Captain Mike McDonald. Does that sound familiar?
It definitely rings a bell. And you're talking about the one that you actually set up and did the radio broadcast from, and not the original time we were there, right?
Oh, no, I'm talking about the original time I was there.
So let me ask you a question then. I believe, was Mark Sosin still with us then?
Mark may have been. It may have been Mark.
That really set you back, because we did the first 10 years of the seminar with us, and then he retired after the 10 years. So that would have been, we started in 1988, so that had been, my guess, might have been 97. And I remember that show. We were at the Palace Theater for the first time, and they had us booked in, and they said, okay, now we're going to help you with the breakdown, because we have, I forgot what they call that, where they have some performance where they have all these people that look like these old stars, like Humphrey Bogart, Sammy Davis Jr. And so we're finishing up and we're breaking down, and I'm seeing Dean Martin walk across the lobby area there, and here comes Frank Sinatra over here, and it was like, it was almost like a humorous thing, And, and Dean Martin comes to talk to us about, hey, what went on fishing seminar? And I'm biting the inside of my cheek, trying not to laugh that I'm sitting here talking to Dean Martin.
Exactly. Those guys were incredible. And I want to say it was the Legends show might have been using it at that time. But yes, that would have been right about the same time. But I'll tell you, when you sit in that atmosphere, you and I were texting yesterday, the one thing I said is, a lot of these captains, and we'll go over some of the Myrtle Beach faculty that will be here, but a lot of these captains do seminars. We had one last weekend or weekend before last, and a lot of these captains do these seminars and they feel obligated to do it, and it's for a good cause or whatever, whether it's whatever. And a lot of times I feel like they hold back on what they share. The one thing I'm going to say about your seminar series, and I think Bouncer Smith will agree with me, my good buddy, and I was going to try and surprise you with another guest call in from Bouncer, but he's busy. But the one thing it seemed to me is that your speakers almost want to leave there being the person that gave out the most information. It's like they get competitive, and I think the way you've done it with groups on the stage now, I think it makes it a better experience. And I mean, the amount of knowledge that is shared across your stages throughout the seminar series is just unbelievable.
Well, it is. And we've done that concept. We call it the team teaching concept. We had done that from the very beginning. And what's unique about it is that when you have a seminar and you send one person out and they talk for a half hour, the audience gets to hear this one person's tactics that they use to catch a particular fish.
Yep.
Now, when you have 4 faculty members on stage that specialize in the same type of species or whatever, you get 3 or 4 different opinions on how they're catching their fish. And it's a much more entertaining exchange.
It's absolutely more entertaining. And I remember the one here that we did do the radio show at, where Captain Jason and our dear friend, the flounder guy from North Carolina, had some
Jimmy Price.
Jimmy and Jason had some heated exchanges in the fact that each of them had their own proven method. They both did. But they each, I think, were pretty much believers in their method, and it created a pretty cool environment in which that it was like, hey, this is why you want to fish the way I do, and this is why you want to fish the way I do, and this is what works better. And I just think the environment is great. I think again, you line up such incredible speakers and faculty, as you call it, and here, of course, I couldn't get any of you guys together that are associated here because they're all off at Captain Chris Ostman's wedding, getting on a cruise ship in Florida, in sunny Florida, for Captain Chris to get married. And that would include, I think, Joe Ziegler's gone to that. Jason's gone to that. But you got Captain Jot Owens coming down here. And Jot has been involved with you for a long time.
Yeah, he's what we call one of our grizzled seminar series veterans. He's been with us a while.
Yep, and he's great and unbelievable spokesperson for Penn, just as you are. You got Harry Vernon is going to actually be here too.
Yep, Harry Vernon's coming up for that one. He's not one to miss the last seminar of the year.
and I can't believe that you've got the one and only Captain Jamie Huff coming up from Charleston now. Jamie spends more time behind the grill than he does doing seminars these days, but he is an incredible fisherman, a great friend of mine, and I know he's got a lot of great tips to share. And this is the other thing, granted, look where you've been: Fort Myers, Destin, Wilmington, Isla Mirada, Atlantic City, Port St. Lucie, and Trumbull, Connecticut. Is that how you say it?
Yeah, Trumbull, Connecticut. That's correct. And then that's our second to last, and then we come down and see you.
Yep, but it's just so great because I know a lot of people are saying, well, I don't want to hear how a guy in Florida catches fish. Like, that's not going to make a difference here. But with the lineup here, it's just awesome because you do have some of the best captains here. And to get that much knowledge from all those guys, and then to have that national, the Harry Vernons who are going to contribute so much, and Mike Goodwine, and then Paul Gubbolt. I didn't even mention Paul. Paul's a great friend of mine as well. Paul's an incredible bottom fisherman and a great troller, wahoo fisherman too, but really, really good bottom fisherman. But I'm excited. We're going to be there, and we're excited to do the radio show up there that morning as well. And Jason's going to sit in and host with us when he can, and then obviously he'll be on stage as well. But I think it's going to be a incredible seminar series, and people that want, it's in our magazine. We published it in Trilogy Outdoors magazine this month. Of course, I'm sure you can pick up Saltwater Sportsman magazine as well to find out more. Where's the best place to go to find out more information and to go ahead and grab your tickets so you're set to go?
It's the website, which is nationalseminarseries.com. Again, it's nationalseminarseries.com. And you could get on that website. You'll see the whole entire 8-stop tour that we go to, and they just have to click on the Myrtle Beach presentation. You'll see all the faculty members, what they do, and then the whole website tells you exactly, what's involved, the items that you get for being an attendee, and it's just pretty an extensive site that tells all about the seminars. And, ironically, having done this for so long, people they'll talk to you, like if you're doing interviews or somebody's writing something up, they said, okay, what would you say is the biggest this or the seminars or biggest that? And to the point where I said, well, the biggest endorsement for the seminar series, which is the nation's longest running and most successful seminar on recreational saltwater fishing tactics, the best endorsement we have is that the tour's been around now for 37 years.
Wow.
And you couldn't do that with a subpar show. 37 years, if that wasn't a good show, no way in the world we'd be running that long.
No, exactly. And again, I speak as somebody, I told you I'm a huge supporter of it, and I do know that it made a big difference with me. I know that I learned a lot from it, but I also know that it probably created a drive to learn more, but to be better and to revise my fishing tactics. And I say that in a sense, I wanted to I didn't want to get one-dimensional, but I knew I was at a point where I was learning a lot back then, and trying to do king mackerel fishing and live bait versus dead bait, anchored up versus trolling, and blah blah blah. And through listening to all the speakers, I revised it. I figured out what I did, what I do better. I mean, obviously, the number one thing to do is I let the fish dictate how I'm going to fish for them. That is first and foremost. I let the fish tell me how I'm going to catch them. But I do have preferred methods, and I do have ways that are proven and work better for me. It might not work better for George Poveromo, but it works better for me here, and that's what I stick to. And I learned a lot, like I said, from Brent McMullen here, from you. And I'm trying to remember who else covered kingfishing, but I took a lot from that, and it grew. And again, I think the National Seminar Series that George puts on is well worth the $65. Y'all, I'm just going to tell you that I'm pretty excited because I know George. I'm going to grab a bucket. I'm going to steal a bucket when I go do the radio show there because I love seeing what's all in that bucket. I love getting all the goodies. I love getting all the goodies in the bag or the bucket or whatever we get. I love the goodies. And you've got some incredible sponsors, George. I mean, so do you, when you go, I mean, I know how the TV show works. I being in the business, I know how it works. But these guys just, they hop right on board with George for the seminar series, or do you have sponsors above and beyond your personal sponsors for the TV show that hop on board with the seminar series?
Yeah, the seminar series is a lot of my sponsors, the TV show, also go over there as well. But the seminar series is actually Saltwater Sportsman's deal. So they go out and they get the sponsors to do the seminar tour. So naturally, since I'm running and hosting it, a lot of my TV sponsors also go over there. But then Saltwater has other sponsors that they are close with that also backs the tour. And I've got to tell you, in 37 years that we've been doing the tour, and we have always, a ton of door prizes that we give out in between sessions. And this year alone we never had as many door prizes as we have now for this year. We got to actually work hard to make sure we get those tables and everything else completely cleared off. That's, and if somebody leaves, they didn't win a door prize, their feelings need to be hurt on that one. It's pin reels, coolers, and from Engel, and it goes on and on and on. And we got a ton of tour prizes there. So, you
That's
got a
great.
super good shot at maybe pulling off one of them.
Now, also, if I remember correctly, you prior to and during the breaks, you also have some vendors. Well, some of the companies will be set up in the lobby. Is that still the same way, or have you
Oh
cut
yeah,
that out?
and they're sponsors of the tour. Now what they do is they display the product. They're not allowed to sell,
Okay.
but they're there to showcase the latest products and talk to some of the attendees on a one-to-one basis.
Right.
And they set up in the lobby, and they get hammered twice, during the day. Once when we open the doors to the public and people get their seats, and before the seminar starts, they're out there milling about. And then during the lunch break, that 1 hour break at noon, then they get hammered again. And in between all that, like if we're doing an offshore session and some people are inshore, they don't care too much about the offshore, they use that opportunity to walk out and talk to the sponsors on a one-to-one basis. And the same with it being reversed. If there's an inshore session and the offshore people don't really want to hear that one, they'll go out and walk around. So yeah, they're out there in the lobby area and people could visit with them.
Yep, and I'll tell you, it was I got introduced. I think the last time you were here, this goes back a long. I think it was when the Penn Battle 2 had come out, or maybe the Battle 1. It might have been the Battle 1 when you were here, and we got introduced to it. And I'll be honest with you, I ended up putting 6 on my boat, but. When you leave there and go to the after party, if you're looking for anything, you can find it right there at Bass Pro Shops anyway,
Yeah, no doubt about it. And they put a discount coupon in the bucket as well. So, yeah, without a doubt, you could definitely find it over there.
Well, I'll tell you what, I know you've been busy, and I've caught up to episode 3. I think this week episode 4 came out for the season, if I'm not mistaken. I might be wrong, but I did catch up to season up to episode 3, and that's a great episode. That is a great episode, and that trip to Bahamas. I mean, it must just be, your trip to the Bahamas is our trip to the Gulf Stream.
I know it. It's hard to fathom. And when up in your part of the world there, you have to run so far to get there, and then it just gets farther. The more north that you go, you start getting in the mid-Atlantic, like Maryland and Jersey. And hit those canyons, depending on where you're running at. If you're 100, 120, 130 miles, hit the canyons. So you're looking at a minimum of a 200-mile round trip, plus the trolling that you're doing out there. And, shoot, when we do 200 miles out of South Florida here, we passed Bimini by 150 miles.
Exactly. I know, and you mentioned even in episode 3, you mentioned at the beginning, loading all the production equipment, loading you and your guests and your and the angler and everything on the boat, and you're talking. I mean, even I think that day y'all were running 90 miles on that trip.
Yeah, I think that was about a 92 mile run from North Miami to Blue Marlin Cove, and
Blue Marlin Cove. That's right.
Boat even moves. I mean, because the live wells are filled up, you have your live bait, then you've got your fish box packed with ice, you got everybody's gear. And what a difference when you take off heavy like that and you watch your fuel consumption, and as you start getting halfway across, as you burn that fuel off and get the weight out, you just see your fuel economy picking up and getting better and better and better. It's amazing just to watch that part of it all.
Oh yeah. Well, you and I also. I do want to talk a little bit of wahoo fishing, and I tell you what, 140-pound wahoo, George. Good gosh, dude. That is a fish of a lifetime. I mean, that's any 200 anglers.
It was 143 pounds, 6 ounces, but who's counting?
Who's counting? I don't know. But I can tell you one thing. I would have, I mean, the story is great on that fish. And I guess at first you didn't even think it was a wahoo, did you?
Well, on that one, I did. I knew we had a wahoo on that one, and the tense moment there is that when you're at a San Salvador in the Bahamas, there's this giant hump or underwater mountain that comes up, and there's all these small yellowfins up on the top and small bait fish and those wahoo during the winter and super early in the spring. they're there to feed, and these are the biggest wahoo anywhere. It's just stocks of these big wahoo that one expert told me that he believes that stock migrates from Africa across and then back. It's not a north or south migration like some of these other wahoo do, but this is a totally different stock of a big wahoo. So anyway, when you troll up and you start to approach this underwater hump, and you sort of hold your breath, you want to get hooked up, but you really don't, because you get hooked up and you're on top, there's monster sharks. You got to get the wahoo through those sharks. The best thing scenario is when you turn and you start coming off. If you hook up coming off, you're in a better position because you just keep the boat moving forward and pull this wahoo into deeper water, which would lessen the amount of sharks that would go after it. And that's what we do with the big fish. We were fortunate enough to have it when we were trolling off, and he had a 70 international, dumped half the reel at least on that first run. It was crazy. And then had another solid good run, nowhere near as long as the first one, and we just kept tight, and we got that fish in 143 pounds 6 ounces. We weighed it and I measured it out. I had a mount made, but the ironic thing is when we came back to the marina, I had all the measurements for the mount, so we staked it up.
Yep.
And we actually grilled it and cooked it on the boat that night. You would think a big wahoo like that would be coarse and tough. It was unbelievable how good that was.
Wow. Well,
and when we cleaned it, he had chunks of yellowfin tuna in his stomach. So that big wahoo was tearing up those tuna that were hanging around the hump. Now, the one you're talking about, I didn't go back to San Salvador. They keep talking when you come back and do a show. And I said, why? How am I going to be at 143-pound wahoo? So I stayed away. And a few years later said, let's come there during the spring. Let's go after the yellowfins and the dolphin and billfish. I said, okay, we'll do that. So my second time to San Sal, we're out there trolling, catching yellowfins. We're catching big dolphin. We got a sailfish. And on the way back into the marina, we put the marlin lures out. And we're no more than, I don't know, half a mile from the marina. And one of those lures gets drilled. And it's a straight up and down fight. I'm thinking this is a blue marlin. That's the one I didn't know.
Okay.
The captain's saying that's a yellowfin. I said, it feels like about 100-pound marlin. We're cranking it up, and we couldn't see the fish because it was like dogging under the boat. And once it came up in the clear water and we saw it was a huge wahoo, and that one was 113 pounds, 3 ounces. And so there, it's like the 2 times I've been there, got wahoo over 100 pounds. And, if San Salvador had a lotto, I'd bet on it because I got some good luck over there in the 2 trips I had.
No, absolutely. Well, the, wahoo fishing here has really gained momentum, I think, over the last couple of years. And I think because, unfortunately, in the last 12 years, we've seen our yellowfin fishery just completely drop off, albeit cause of humans, cause of change of habits. I mean, they're fish. God gave them fins for a reason. But I think people have really started keying in on wahoo, and we really gained a lot of high-speed trollers here. A lot of guys that are doing it. Now, here's the thing. The one thing about it that I preach to people when we talk about high-speed fishing is you need to look at your fuel capacity on your boat here, because a lot of people don't realize that 16 to 22 knots, miles an hour, whatever you want to call it, it completely increases your fuel burn. And I've got some friends who have learned the hard way. You get out there and you come back, you got 70 gallons left on a normal trip. Well, when you start running 2 to 3 to 4 hours high speeding, you increase that fuel burn tremendously. And it is a huge factor in a lot of people that do and don't high speed troll is that fuel capacity and whether they're willing to burn that much gas. And what is your thoughts on high speed trolling for wahoo versus the meat fishing? And you've already shared with me, but let's talk about that. A lot of people swear by it. They swear that this Wahoo Series, South Carolina Wahoo Series, over the next 6 weeks, they're going to high speed fish on all 3 days, and that's it. And there's other guys who are going to do a mixture, a combination of the two. But what's George Poveromo's thought about it?
Well, high-speed trolling, like you said, you're going to burn a ton of fuel because when you're on these center consoles, it's the most awkward speed that you're going to run with your boat, because you're getting up around 15 to 20 knots in there, and a lot of times the boat is just shy of trying to get up on planes, so that rear end is down, the bow is up, and you're just like putting a hose overboard. It's the most uneconomical type of speed or position to run this boat. So you're
Yep.
just dumping fuel out of it. Now, the advantage of high-speed wahoo fishing is that there's two advantages. You're covering ground a lot faster, obviously. Plus, wahoo are really aggressive fish. When they see something moving fast, it's like a barracuda at a dock. You start throwing a tube lure out real fast, that cuda just comes there and he nails it. When you're high-speed trolling, you're covering ground, plus these wahoo are traveling usually in pods, in groups.
Yep.
So when you see these lures moving so rapidly, it doesn't give these wahoo really time to figure out if that's the real deal or not. If they want to eat, they might be with a group of 15, 10, a dozen fish. They just got to go in and get it to be the first ones there, or otherwise they might miss out. So you force an aggressive feeding from a pack because they're moving so fast. And then when you do get one hooked up, usually you could get a double or maybe even a triple, because those other baits are still racing along. So that's the advantage there. But circling back, having fished, center console my whole life, and I've done the high speed stuff, and it works. I think the high speed is arguably better for numbers of wahoo. You'll get the numbers, and you'll get occasionally a big fish. But I think as far as the real big fish,
Yep.
I think that's still that traditional 8 to 10 knots in that range, and getting them that way. The biggest fish, biggest wahoo that I've taken, the 143, the 113 out here in my boats, a 66 3/4 out of South Florida,
Yep.
55 in the Bahamas, had all come on the more traditional trolling speeds. And that is, in a lot of cases, pulling a combo of lures and meat baits. One of the top wahoo lures of all time is the Islander with a big horse ballyhoo combination.
Yep.
That's taken probably more wahoo than anything combined. But as things progressed, people like these real fancy looking lures, and they hear the buzzword high speed trolling, and so they all get on that bandwagon. But you look over time, and you could sit out there and just work those big combo lure meat baits. And if you don't want to just deal with the meat baits, you want to go all lures, well, you get those jet head style lures. And I'll tell you that I just got 2 of them, the prototypes, and I don't know if they've hit the market yet, but I want to try them. Rapala, always made those deep diving plugs. They just came out with a Mag 160 deep diving trolling lure that supposedly is made to be pulled up to 18 knots and run about 15 to 20 feet beneath the surface. It's a brand new lure, and I think that one would be really, really amazing for wahoo. And circling back, when I first came to work with Saltwater Sportsman back in 1983, a friend of mine said, "Come over to Venice, Louisiana. We get big wahoo out here. Let's go." So I told him, "Okay, I'm going to head over. You want me to rig baits?" "No, we don't rig baits out here." We flew on his boat to his boat, and all he did, he put 4 rods out, and each one was a CD18 Rapala. That's all he fished on, I think, about 150-pound single strand wire. And he put no riggers. He put 4 of them in the back, and he'd watch. If one was digging in and cutting in a little more, he would just change those rods around until they looked straight. And before lunch, we ended up with 8 wahoo. The biggest was 64, 65 pounds. And that's how they did it in Louisiana, and tore the wahoo up on those Rapala swimming plugs. So don't get discouraged, and people in the high speed. If you're geared up for that, that's a wonderful thing, but don't neglect those 8 to 10 knots, traditional trolling speeds, the combo meat baits, lures, deep diving plugs. They will catch wahoo.
Yep. And, up here, you'll get a lot of guys that love fishing big horse mullet. They big mullet. We like to, do our own little rigging methods on them. But a lot of us love to pull those big mullet, and I think it's a great bait. But I swear, it just seems to me that probably the biggest wahoo I catch are, like you said, on an islander or somewhat style bait like that. with a big ballyhoo on it. That's just it. And whether it's on a
And
trolling weight a little bit deeper,
hmm
it does. It just seems to produce the biggest fish. And what we do, my partner is, I mean, you were kind enough to help my guys out a little bit last year when they were fishing a tournament down in the Tortugas, and they are very keyed in, and I can't say enough about it. I'm sure you'll agree with me. They are very keyed in on the moon. They are keyed in on the moon phases.
that was my next topic to talk to you about.
And what we like to do, what we've started doing, depending on where we're going to target, what we're seeing, is a lot of times if it's at midday major or an early morning major or minor, we may, if we don't feel really good about marking, if we're not seeing what we want to see, we may throw out those high-speed stuff and start working the ledges and working the areas until we find something. And now if we catch a fish, we're not going to change up our techniques. But if we are working and we start marking, but we're not getting bites, we may switch right back up. What are your thoughts on that? And also, go ahead with the moon.
That's where I was going next. The other thing with the wahoo is you've mentioned the salooner periods there when you said a major and then the minor. Now, the salooner period is when you have a major. That's when the moon is directly above you and directly beneath you. And it's a period of roughly an hour, 45 minutes, maybe 2 hours where game and fish in particular tend to feed actively. Then you have what they call the minor periods. That's the moon rise and the moon set.
Yep.
It's just as intense of a feeding blitz, but for a shorter period of time.
Right.
So if you're out there looking around for wahoo and you're trolling, and you see during the course of the day when your minor or major period is, you want to be where you plan to be and fishing hard around those periods, because there tends to be an uptick in feeding activity. And I know with our wahoo, they'll turn on, they'll do real well, and then they'll shut down, and you could troll over pods of them. If they're not going to strike, they're not going to strike.
That's
but
right.
It's all about that. And this correlates with the change in the tides if you look at those salooner periods. So people always ask, well, what's tides got to do 60, 70, 80 miles offshore for the wahoo? Well, it's that gravitational pull from the moon that works the tides, also has an effect on those offshore game fish that causes them to go into a feeding blitz or feed the heaviest. So salooner periods, the majors, the minors, we'll find out when those are in your course of the fishing day. And if you need to search and look for fish, do it in between those periods, because when you're coming on the periods, you want to be in that zone. You want to be on the ledge or the areas that you fish. You're spread out and concentrating hard during that period when you're more apt to find action.
Yep, exactly. We, and another thing I'll say is we're obviously sitting here talking about it offshore, but I truly have found that it makes a difference with almost any species that we target in the pelagic family, especially. King mackerel, really big on it. This year in tournaments, I think all of our of the 5 money fish that we had, I think 4 of them came during a major or a minor.
Yep.
And totally, we had made it our objective to have lines in the water. No matter how hard the day was, we were going to have lines in the water during those periods. And at one point in one of our fish, Jay Bache, who has been a speaker at your seminar, Jay Bache and I were fishing a tournament, and we were actually on a 38-mile run between spots and realized that the minor was going to hit while we were running. And I found a spot that we had done good bottom fishing on in about 110 foot of water. And I said, all right, before we continue on, let's stop. Let's put 3 lines out. That's it. 3 lines. Let's put a bluefish and 2 manhaden out. And we didn't get the 3rd line into water. We called our bunny fish for the tournament. And, it was just, it's hard to beat it into people's heads. They just don't understand how important that solunar table is, and how much a difference it makes with the way these fish feed. And again, you're really kissing your sister if you're driving or moving while one of those is going on, albeit the major or minor.
There's no doubt, and there's a lot of factors that could influence that too. I mean, if you have weather or something, and that could throw those solunar bites off too.
Yep.
But on just a normal, typical, when you have a period of stable weather, those salunars really do have a lot of merit in there. And I mean, I sort of joke around too. I said, look at the werewolf. He always came out in the full moon. That's a major period, didn't he?
Yep, exactly. That's what, and he fed good, unfortunately. But it's been tough. Now you mentioned artificials, and I did see I saw that new Rapala bait, and that thing probably is awesome. I swear by Rapalas for stripers up here on the lakes. I'm not a real big striper fisherman. I like to cover ground. I know that I'm looking for bait and everything else, so I will pull those stretch 20s and pull those up there on the lake if I'm going for stripers, and they work great. But that high-speed lure has got to be incredible. I want to put it in there. But I catch a lot of wahoo on cedar plugs. We have, even in our high-speed spread, and my partner's probably going to kill me for this. In our high-speed spread, we have started putting a bigger cedar plug out in the center, and we don't put weight on it. Like, we literally just put it out. And of course, we add a little bit of a shock leader to it, because at that speed, hitting, a lot of times you'll have, some issues with your leader giving out. But we do put a pretty good shock leader on there while we're trolling it. But we have had success with it, and a lot of success. And I've caught a lot of wahoo behind a bird on a cedar plug. Pulling a bird with a cedar plug behind it. You see the same thing? Do you pull a cedar plug much?
Very rarely. We do it when we get to the Bahamas. Occasionally, we'll stick one back there for tuna.
Right.
And I'm trying to even think back if we ever did get a wahoo in a plug. I can't honestly say because I don't recall. But what we tend to do if we're going to fish the lures is and again, depending on what we're after, we'll have our full spread of baits on the flat lines and the outriggers. Then the center rigger, I'll tend to fish a lure back there. And one time I was fishing this very tiny, it was a small purple jet-like thing, feathered, thinking, all right, that'd be good for school dolphin. It was on an 80-pound, I don't even know if it was 80-pound, might have been 50-pound mono or floor leader, and we fished that way back, thinking maybe get some school dolphin, where that got drilled. And probably about a half hour later, had no idea what it was. Alongside the boat, there's about 100-pound blue marlin, had eaten that little tiny lure, and never got near the bill with that leader where he could freight. He would be able to get right off.
Right.
So that would have been one of the most unusual center rigger catches. But I know on our travels that we have gone up north and have done TV shows out in the canyons on some mid-Atlantic boats and northeast boats, they'll fish those cedar plugs religiously. And, you catch the heck out of the yellowfins on them and all that. In fact, when we did that trip to San Sal, the second one, where I got the 113-pound wahoo, they were fishing a cedar plug for the yellowfins, and we were doing, good on the yellowfins on the cedar plug.
Right. And another, one thing I'm thinking back, do you give out, I can't remember if you give out a booklet with the seminar series.
Oh, brand new one for 2024. We have a brand new textbook. Our tradition has been like every fourth year we do a new textbook. And so this year we have a brand new textbook that every attendee receives on it. So a lot of goodies in there.
And maybe I'm wrong, and if I am, I apologize, because I know I've read it from. I swear I read it from you. Don't you do some diagrams in there of spreads that you pull?
Yes.
Thank you. I knew it was you, because I know that one of my first couple times offshore was right after we had done. I had been to your seminar series, and actually ended up running a friend's boat offshore. And I mean, other than the rods and the rigs and everything else, I had no method to the madness as far as where I wanted to put things. So I referred to the book and looked at the spread you had out there, and the one thing I paid attention to was that way back line.
Yep.
And
Yep.
I'll tell you, up here, that way back line gets devoured up here. It does, especially the tuna. The tuna love that thing.
Yep, and the thing too is it serves a couple purposes. Any fish that whatever is way back and doesn't have any inclination to come near the boat, it's out there all by itself. But if you have a billfish that comes up on your flat lines and doesn't eat, and it starts fading back, you still have that last far outrigger that would give a shot at getting that fish that drops out of a spread, and sometimes that's the one you'll nail too. So it does double duty on the type of fish it will attract.
Right. I want to double back on something you mentioned, and it is the sharks. Also in watching the episode, I saw it. We have, and I don't know if you've heard much in North Carolina. Of course, I'm sure you heard about Big Rock, but I don't know if you've heard much lately. But apparently, the tuna season was frequented by sharks during the bluefin season. Offshore fishing up there has become terrible. The yellowfins are getting devoured by sharks. We're having the same problem here. What are your thoughts on that? Do you see it becoming
100%? And if something is not done,
thank you. Here we go. Good.
In 5 years, if something's not done in 5 years, we're not going to have a recreational sport fishery out there, because we try to conserve these fish, like our reef fish down here. Your muttons groupers have to be a certain size and all. And we had protected these sharks to so much that they're an apex predator, that there's nobody above them other than us that would even keep them thin. And there's so many of them, and they're intelligent. They know the boats. They could hear the motors. They know when the motors slow down, that either you're going to start drifting on the reef or you're going to throw an anchor, and they'll sit around and they'll just wait to hook up a fish and get a free meal. Or if you catch an undersized snapper and you got to put on a sequelizer to bring it down to release it properly, it gets either eaten on the way up or gets eaten on the way down. And that the show that you watched when we fish Northwest Providence Channel in the Bahamas with yellowfins,
Right.
You go back 15, 20 years when we used to do that, you never saw a shark. You go up there and you crush those yellowfins, and over that period of time, those sharks roam. They stay close to the yellowfins now because that's their food source.
Yep.
And they hear these boats. And when these boats get hooked up, here they come, because it's going to be an easy meal to get these hooked yellowfins. And we had lost 6 in a row on that show. No matter how heavy of a tackle, the sharks are relentless. And it gets to the point, you said, let's just do something else, because you're feeding sharks yellowfins. And that's there are just so many of them. And then what I think needs to be done.
Yep.
And I'm not talking about the great migratory sharks. I'm not talking about the hammerheads, the great whites, the makos, or the tigers. They're not the problem. It's the bulls and the lemons and those sharks. I think there needs to be a limited commercial reentry into that shark fishery.
Amen.
Set a certain time frame, be it 6 months, 8 months, maybe a year, then pull the lines out and do an assessment. And if there's still tons of them, then you go back into it again. And you talk to some of the former shark fishermen, it's, well, there's no market for those sharks. Well, in this day and age, there's a market for everything, and you could find the market for the shark meat, but they have to be thinned down, because all the conservation that we're doing with these fish, they're getting eaten the way up, and all. We're not going to have our pelagics, or actually, especially our bottom fish, to sustain a recreational fishery anymore. If there's no fish to go after, or very limited, who's going to be buying our boats, buying our tackle? I think it's at that stage that we're critical. Something's got to be done.
I feel the same way. I know Brant McMullen at Ocean Isle Fishing Center feels the same way, and he's starting a big process right now, trying to figure something out and bringing a lot of awareness to it, because it has gotten terrible. We found ourselves the other day trolling offshore, having to pull everything in and leave. I mean, we were losing, for us, 10 to 15 pound black fins is normal. And we were losing, 80% of the catch to sharks.
Yep.
And
It,
at what point are you not doing worse for the fishery by sitting there and basically laying out a buffet for them? I mean,
I agree. It's just, it's insane, and it's over in all aspects of fishing, from your snook fishing to your reef fishing to, certain pelagics, like you'll fish the humps and the keys. Someday, if the sharks aren't around, you can get those blackfins, and other times that they're there, you cannot get a blackfin to the boat. And, the Bahamas, that yellowfin tuna deal, it's a crapshoot. You may get lucky and get a few fish in and get in the area where the sharks aren't, but more times than not, those sharks will be on those yellowfins, and it's overrun, and it's a occurrence, all the way up, and something definitely has to be done. And like I said, I know the industry is hearing this, and I'm sure they're trying to figure out exactly what needs to be done, but they need to take it very seriously, because like I said, 5-6 years from now, if nothing is done, you're not going to be selling reels. You're not going to be selling boats or motors, and that could be a collapse of our industry. I think it's serious. It's that serious.
it is that serious. I feel the same way, and I'll tell you here, Stephen again spends more time under the water than he does on top, and he has, in the last 5 years, had more run-ins with bull sharks than he's ever seen in the past. And where you would hit 6 bottoms, 6 different live bottom areas, and see 1, he's now going to 6 live bottom areas and seeing 6, 1 at each spot or multiple. And when you get into bull sharks, you're talking aggressive. You're talking they're going to eat
100%.
everything you release. They are relentless. We were deep dropping in 800 foot several weeks ago, trying to get barrelfish. And I don't think we lost any barrelfish, but I know we lost some 3 and 4 pound Vermilion snappers to the bull sharks, and it was crazy. Something's got to be done. The commercial fishery open up for them, but to some degree, something has got to be done, or it's going to get terrible. And I don't want to compare it to, because I know it's not the same, but I do want to talk about one last thing with you before we end, and that is the red snapper fishery. I know you fish mostly in the Atlantic, don't you? Or do you fish the Gulf? Where do you fish mostly?
I fish the Gulf when I'm down off of Key West, and I've got spots that I bottom fish in there. And get down to Tortugas, and you'll see some of the red snapper when you get down Tortugas way. But I guess fortunately or unfortunately for us, you don't see that many red snapper where we're at. We're with muttons and all that. But I do fish in the Gulf, and have done shows with the red snapper and a whole bit. And I know that's a whole nother mismanaged or species there too. It's backwards.
We've had so what we're seeing here is, so typically, you just say this time of the year, I can go into 80 foot to 110 foot to some live bottoms that are big, 2 to 4 pound black sea bass that I know I can go get my limit, have a good time, and be back and grouper closed. I might catch a couple grouper. Let me rephrase that. 10 years ago, I might have caught a couple grouper, but now it's every other drop. It's a red snapper, anywhere from 10 pounds to 40 pounds. And I sent you a video that Stephen took on one of these live bottoms where he went down. And the red snapper met him halfway down the water column and swam around with him. And he looked around. There was no black bass. There was none. There was very few grouper. And for me, in my mind, I'm thinking a gag would be like the man. But apparently gags are pretty shy. They're pretty shy. They hide anyway. And all the gags were in holes or hidden. But the red snapper were just running free and rampant. And I talked to so many people that have just, it's the same thing with sharks. Like, you'll go to a bottom where you're, used to catching some grouper, catching some vermilion, some nice black bass and whatnot, and it's red snapper every other. And you're putting them on a sequelizer. You're trying to do the right thing, and knowing that a high percentage of these fish are having a high mortality rate. But something's got to be done. The South Atlantic Fisheries Management Council has had so much heat on them, and I think their science is absolutely terrible. without a doubt. Their sampling process is terrible. MREP sucks. And who can argue with, I mean, if you send a group of 20 divers out, and these are your areas that you need to go, and you need to bring me video in all these areas, and then let's count. You know, don't don't take the word of a guy sitting up on the deck of a boat riding with a commercial guy just to count the fish, or a guy at a landing who's intercepting, every 10th angler because he's stuck with them trying to survey them. And while in the meantime, 5 anglers just left that were pissed because they had to leave spots for red snapper fishing, but you didn't get a survey from them.
Sure.
I just think that there's got to be a better science, a better way to get better science. And that there's in some way, shape, or all right. So the program they did has apparently worked. It's worked great. But at some point, let's practice that sunrise clause. Let's bring it back. Let's open it back up. I mean, 1 fish a person a trip. That's fine. We're not talking filling the fish box.
Fish, exactly. Yeah.
But
and then, like you said, maybe you open it, but then you pause it after a season and get a feel for what is out there, and you sort of tiptoe back into that and see if that's the thing. But go out there, get your fish, keep them strict limits on them, and see how that takes.
Yep. Well, I know Stephen always does this when he does a podcast, but he loves to ask our VIP guests something that, and he may have already asked you this, but something that nobody knows about George Poveromo. But I'm going to ask you a question.
Sure.
I'm going to ask you a different one. I want to know what you feel like in the last, just say 20 years. What is the biggest change that you've seen to our sport of fishing? What do you think is in 20 years, if you put a finger on one thing? I know there's a lot, but if you were going to put your finger on one thing, what do you think is probably the biggest change in our sport, albeit good or bad?
Well, without a doubt, what the biggest change that I see in our sport, and I might be jaded because I'm saying this as a South Florida native,
right?
There's more people fishing in saltwater today than there's ever been. So you have a lot more pressure. And even though we do have, like in our state, good guidelines and close seasons and our conservation measures seem to be doing okay and keeping it sustainable levels. But I jokingly refer to, and yes, we're in a jaded area, South Florida, like the boating capital of the world. I have never seen so many big center consoles with triples, quads, 5 outboards. They're freaking everywhere. And again, as a South Florida native, it makes me wonder. I said, man, there's must be a heck of a lot more drug smugglers down here than I even ever imagined. It's like where the money comes from.
Yep. That's the truth. It's the same way. Listen, I know y'all are a tourist destination, but you're also a retirement destination. You're also an area where a lot of people are moving
certain areas. Yes, certain areas down in Florida, without a doubt, is retirement. Now, I wouldn't call South Florida. When I say South Florida, I'm talking Palm Beach,
right,
down through Miami, and I'll even include the Florida Keys in there. That's still a more of a vibrant area where people are careers that are working down here, because that's a very active marine community where there's a lot of money out there to keep doing what a lot of people are doing. But if you go to certain sections or periods of the state where you have the retirement, well, then you see maybe a fall off with a reef offshore oriented and maybe some more of the near shore, inshore boats. But there are pockets, and without doubt, South Florida, is still vibrant. And like I said, it must be a heck of a lot more drug smugglers down here.
Well, I do know that probably, again, going back to inside the last 20 years, I would say too that it does seem that the new anglers or the newer fishermen, people getting into fishing, buying those $1 million center consoles, I think the access of knowledge is far greater.
No doubt.
It's YouTube. It's going to George's, going to your website. Your website's awesome, by the way. And I'll tell everybody, y'all got to go check it out. Is it GeorgePoveromo.com? I can't remember.
Yep, perfect. Yep, George Poveromo, .com.
.com.
And I'll give you one beyond that. You mentioned YouTube, websites, the whole bit, but even somebody who doesn't really do that, you look at the electronics today.
Yep.
Okay, for example, Simrad has their chart company. They own CMAP.
Yep.
And CMAP has CMAP Reveal, which is a high definition bathymetric charts of areas where you see every friggin' nook and cranny everywhere. So anyone who wants to bottom fish, where we work and we have all these numbers, they could look at this whole area now and say, man, look at this crevice. Look at this rock pile over here. They put the cursor on, they go there.
Yep.
And now they've got the bottom spots and they catch fish. Then you look at the radar. Back in the day, we had to fine tune these radars to locate birds. That was one of our best kept secrets. Now you got Simrad has bird mode.
Oh, I love it. I love it.
And you take a guy who never fished before, you give him the center console and he wants to go catch mahi.
Yep.
And he's got the radar going, puts it in bird mode. He could sit and find birds like we are. So you look at those two factions alone, and it puts these newbies, they get them so much closer to actually catching fish because of it. So the technology just from the boats and the electronics themselves could take these people without that much experience and make them a danger to the
Yep.
guys that are veterans out there.
I have not done a real seminar in probably 5 years, but it always seemed to me that the guy would leave, or the question the guy had at the end of it is, man, I came because I thought y'all were going to give out some GPS spots and stuff and help us out. And I'm like, dude, I mean, like, I don't know. Between magazines, radios, TV, and everything else, like, I'll share some about locations, but for the most part, I'm like you. I'm fishing with somebody else, and I'm not going to give up their spots, and that's not my job.
Yeah,
My job is to help you understand how to do what we're doing. And it is your job to put that money in the boat and go figure out where. We'll give you all the tools how to do it. But do you get that question a lot? Hey man, can you give me a couple spots? And
I'm going to show you how backwards those people are. Today, you have watches. You go with a guide, and people have busted me on this before. They bust other guys that are out there. We've had a couple production team members that are no longer with us that I found out that they've got these watches, and you get to one of your spots, and they hit the watch, and it locks the GPS number
Yes,
where
sir.
you're at.
Yep.
And I found out that they were doing that and selling some of the spots. So, I mean, that was the end of that one. And then I've also heard other stories where people have gone with these, boats, and they go off and they charter or whatever they do. And every time they stop, they just bam, hit their phone or they hit their watch.
Yep.
And it's so easy to pirate. And the other trick that happens to me a lot is, say you're anchored and you're bottom fishing and you're in the middle of nowhere and some boat's coming by, you notice the name Mark 6 in my boat, they know it's me. Hey, so what they do a drive-by.
Oh yeah.
And they wave at you. Hey, how you doing, George? But what they do is when they're driving by, they hit that GPS, and now they've got a spot within 50, 100 feet of where you're at, and they know where you're fishing.
Mm-hmm.
And so there's, when they ask for GPS numbers, I'd buy those people a beer because they're old-fashioned. They're not a danger anymore. It's these new guys with the watches and everything else, and that mug you, and they run by it that hit these numbers. So all those guys out there, they need to be careful. These people that are these watches these days, and it happened to me. It's happened to me.
Yep, and that's crazy. That's a crazy story to hear because you would think. Your production team's pretty incredible and very professional.
We did a couple losers that we did that had picked up through a recommendation, which we weeded them out pretty fast there.
Oh my God, I can see that now. I can see that marketplace ad right now. Hey, GPS spots, compliments of George Poveromo, proven numbers. You can see them on TV.
Hey, well,
send
they
me
won't do that
send me $500.
But if they do that, I'm going to present with a pair of Italian floor shines. You know what they are,
Oh,
don't you?
yes, yes.
Cement blocks.
Cement blocks, yes, yes, I know all
You take
about
them
those.
offshore.
I know all about those, but it is a shame to see that people do that. And listen, I think if I'm not mistaken, I wanted to pull my text up because I don't want to misquote myself, but I do feel strongly that when I reached out to you last year for those guys, for my guys who were coming down there, I think I even said, like, I didn't want locations. What they were looking for was what you thought was the best way for them to target. They wanted
Yeah.
some tips for
Yep.
targeting kings down there. They were going the tortugas. They knew
Yep.
that, but they wanted they wanted your opinion on techniques, and that is different. I mean, I think when you're
Sure.
blatantly. I mean, like, I would not even, if George, if you called me and said, and I know you wouldn't, but if you did, said, hey, I'm going to be there a couple days early next weekend. I want to go out and fish. Give me a couple spots for some black bass or something,
Hmm.
That's different. But it's, I don't know. And by the way, I was going to tell you this. If I know your schedule's crazy, but I'll offer you up fishing the day before or day after you get into town. If you come in early, I'd love to take you fishing. I am wearing out some monster trout right now.
Well,
Um,
I would so much love to do that, but I got respectfully decline because when we're in, it's a blur, and I'm on a babysit mission with my production team and setup teams, and so
oh, I figured.
I got to be the guy walking around with the badge and keep everybody in order while we're doing
Oh,
this.
I know. Well, I just want to make sure I offer because
But I do
I
appreciate
always
that.
tell Mark Davis and I are good friends, and I always tell Mark, hey, listen, if you're coming through the beach and you come down, make sure you cut out a day early or leave a day so I can take you fishing. And he is just like you, busy. And I tell you what, it's why your products, it's why your show, it's why George, you have been so successful and continue to be. One of my favorites in the world of outdoor television and fishing. And we could probably do an entire another podcast once again, just talking about how that's changed over the years.
Hmm.
Mentioned YouTube, TikTok, and everything else, all the social
Yep.
media world. I've noticed that you've become great friends with a couple who have an incredible YouTube channel. And I love watching their stuff. My kids actually watch their stuff as well. And I think it is how do you say it? Not bow open,
Oh, Life by the Bow.
life by the bow. Yes,
Yeah,
yes.
very good friends, and they do a good job. And I will give you a little premise on here. And I'm sure Mark. I can't speak for Mark Davis, but I'm sure he'd be at the same school. Now, the biggest difference is between broadcast television and YouTube are the demographics.
Yep.
And YouTube, you have a lot of young kids that are there, and like you'll hear some of these YouTubers, and I'm not talking Life by the Bow, they're in a different category, but
Yep.
some of these YouTubers, hey, we get 1,000,000 hits, we get this, and they don't even own their own boats, but they'll do something fishing wise. But you got to realize the demographics. They're hitting kids,
Yep.
and broadcast television, you're hitting people mainly that are from the 50s, 60s, people who, if they're successful, have enough disposable income built up where they're buying these $200,000, $300,000 boats, these
Yep.
reels, the electronics, where the kids don't have that income. So there's a market difference in demographics between the YouTubers and the broadcast television ones. So that's why you're on, knock on wood, on TV. My sponsors have been with me from the very, very beginning because
Yep.
we hit a market that has that type of money where a lot of these YouTubers don't have that clientele.
Thank you. Your clientele is the one that's going to buy the products that you have on the show.
Bingo.
Their clientele are the ones that just want to watch them do something stupid or
That's the
catch
big
a
deal right
fish
there.
or do whatever. And I stand behind that as well. And I'm working with a company right now out of Colombia, a big national fishing company, and this is the battle that I'm up against is that, and we've had great conversation with them, and I think that they do realize that there is a lot of value in some of those YouTubers, but there's also value in broadcast and radio and podcast as well, and And listen, our value is a lot better because we had George Poveromo on this week. And man, I can't thank you enough for taking your time out of your schedule to join us. I look forward to seeing you in 3 weeks. I think we're at now. I think it's 3 weeks.
Yep.
And we're going to have a great time and come up there and hang out with you guys and take in the seminar and promote it and have a good time. And then hopefully we'll get to hang out and have a cold beverage and chat a little bit at Bass Pro Shops. But I really appreciate you. And again, for them to get seminar tickets, you can go to nationalseminarseries.com. Right, George?
Perfect. 100%.
All right, man. Well, listen, I'm going to let you go and enjoy that South Florida, and you probably got 100 billion things to do, but it has been a pleasure with you joining me on Trilogy Outdoors Podcast, and I really appreciate you.
Well, hey, I appreciate you having me on there, and it was an enjoyable talk, and we'll do it again.
All right, George. Take care, my friend. All right, man. It's so great to talk to George, and again, as you can tell from the podcast, the man is he's a normal human being like you and me, and he loves fishing and loves sharing it. And that National Seminar Series is worth it. Once again, March 2nd at Myrtle Beach at the Conference Center at Barefoot Resort from 9 a.m. to 3 p.m., and you don't want to miss that after party. Trust me, it is a lot of fun, and where all the truth and lies start crossing paths there. But I am going to do some work on Not Mine 10, my beautiful Key West 250 Bay Reef, and I'm over here at Palm Road Storage. If you are a listener, if you're in the Grand Strand area, if you want some incredible storage, we have got it right here at Palm Road Storage. I promise you there is everything in here from 38-foot Freemans. I think there might be a 43-foot contender over here. I think there might be a 40-foot Freeman in here, but plenty of room and safe. State-of-the-art security system. So Palm Road Storage right here in Murrells Inlet. But we appreciate everybody. And, hey, Trilogy Outdoors popped into the top 100 podcast last week. We want to continue that. So to do that, we need you to click like, share, and subscribe to us on your podcast platform you're listening to. And as always, remember, you can catch us on several different things. Trilogy Outdoors Magazine. You can catch Southern Anglers Radio Show every Saturday on the iHeart app from 8 till 10. And Trilogy Outdoors Podcast, where we're always talking fins, fur, and feathers. Trilogy Outdoors Podcast is a product of Trilogy Outdoors Media. All views and opinions of our hosts and guests are not necessarily those of our sponsors. Trilogy Outdoors is produced and edited by Trilogy Outdoors Media. Be sure to follow us on all the podcast platforms as well as our social media pages on Instagram, Facebook, and Twitter. And also don't forget our other brands, Southern English Radio Show and Walk 'em All Outdoor Magazine. To find more information, visit TrilogyOutdoorsMedia.com. And remember, if it's anything dealing with fins, fur, and feathers, you're going to find it right here on Trilogy Outdoors.